Hi, Rachel.
Alyson.
Okay, so let's just dive right into questions. So we're here mostly to talk about the Lucky List today.
Which you can get on Amazon India.
Yes, available now. So my first question is, when and how did you come up with the idea for the Lucky List? This was your first original work. Is it something you've been working on in the background for a while? Or did you kind of just start after like you were done writing all this time?
Yeah, that's a good question. The original idea for it came up every year. Alyson's family goes on a trip to this beautiful lake house in Canada. And I think that was really where I kind of first had the idea for the book. I was just sitting out on the back deck during the sunset, and I kind of just had this idea to write a story that was kind of set in the summer, kind of had this girl going through all of these incredible transformations to really become the person that she really wants to be. And I think that was the initial spark for the idea. It kind of changed and took different shapes the longer that I was working on it. And then, yes, I did actually, right at the same time as I kind of had a fully fleshed out story idea and outline for it, all this time kind of swung into the mix. So I actually put a pause on it to work on all this time, write all the drafts, go through all the edits. And then I picked the Lucky List back up when it was finished. So I was really excited that I got a chance to do that.
Was it hard to like put it down for so long and then come back to it?
I think certain elements of that are really tricky. I think in writing that happens sometimes, and sometimes happens a lot, especially, if you start a story and kind of get interrupted by another story or another project or another round of revisions, which I think happens a lot in writing. It can be really hard because, when you get that initial spark for a story and you kind of have that fire and you're in that headspace and, you're just really wrapped up in this new idea, and then like kind of putting a pause on that, whether it's forced or not, kind of does sometimes like you lose momentum. There's no getting around it. But I find that, making playlists, having aesthetics, just stuff that can kind of bring you back into the story really helps. But yeah, it could be really tricky sometimes when you have to put a pause on something, and then kind of finding that fire that you had when you originally started the story can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard for me to like jump back and forth between books because like I'm writing from such a pretty different point of view. But sometimes it's also like this last time I made the jump. It was also nice because you kind of go in knowing like you can write like because you just got done writing like all this, and so it does feel a lot more possible in that way, which is kind of nice.
No, definitely. Just the awareness that you can actually I think finish a story. Sometimes it really feels like a mountain.
Yeah.
But just like, oh yeah, I just like did all of that. I did all the rounds of revisions and I'm like proud of the final product. So you're kind of staring at like the mess of your new first draft and you're like, what is going on? But like just kind of like knowing that at the end of the journey, it'll be a nice completed book. I think really helps. But yeah, it definitely can be tricky, putting a pause on it to work on something else and getting out of that headspace and then trying to get back to it. I think it's like with anything,
So your first two books, 5 Feet Apart and All This Time, you wrote based off of, you adapted screenplays to books. Which is sort of like having a really detailed outline before you get writing.
Yeah, definitely.
So with the Lucky List, did you still start with an outline before you try to dive into writing the actual book, or did you just kind of go right into it?
Yeah, I think my experience working on 5 Feet Apart and All This Time made me realize that I definitely do work best if I have an outline, or just kind of like a vague awareness of like where the story is going. So yeah, for the Lucky List, I definitely leaned into that. Initially it was just kind of scenes and chapters and kind of getting a feel for the story. But then I definitely reached a point where it was like, I think if I want to get this book done in any kind of time frame, and I think that's the other thing with writing, you have deadlines, you have like the expectation of putting out a book a year or a book every year and a half or something. And so if I wanted to get the book done, I absolutely needed to make an outline and kind of at least just get the first draft done using it. And then you can always build and revise and change the story, or even while writing it, you can make an outline and change it while you're writing it. But I think it just really helped me sit down and get the book done instead of feeling like I was just like clacking away and not really making any progress, or like not being able to see the whole picture of the story. And I really do definitely give that up to like all this time and 5 feet apart, showing me that like, hey, like if you want to actually complete a first draft and have something to revise and make better, the best way to do it for you, for me personally, is to make an outline.
Yeah, I feel like even when you do have an outline, it's still hard to finish because you do find that it's not perfect and like, oh, I actually need to add some more scenes here. But I've actually recently just been making notes like, hey, like come back here and add this scene instead of doing it as I'm moving through. Because I just want to get to the end to know that like I'm at the end and then I'll go back. And
no, I totally get that. Yeah, no, that's probably a really good way to do it. And I think sometimes like those notes that you're talking about can really change like scenes that you already wrote, and also kind of it can like kind of have a ripple effect kind of thing. So yeah, if it's like kind of more of like a lofty revision, that's probably the best thing to do, because like we were talking about before, that momentum can be really hard to get back. So if the train is chugging and you want to hit the very last page, sometimes it's best to just make the note and prepare yourself, your future self, for getting the job done.
Yeah. Without hopefully spoiling anything for anyone who hasn't read the book yet, did you always have that scene toward the end where her dad pulls out the note? You know, the scene I'm talking about. Did you always have that, or did it come like later as you were writing?
Yeah. So not to spoil it, I think like there is definitely like from the start of the story, it's really obvious that Emily has difficulty connecting with her dad, and really her mom was the person that she went to kind of for her entire life and opened up to. And they've never been really good at sharing feelings and having hearts to hearts. So I think I always knew that there would be a scene between them, especially near the end, where they kind of connect in a way over the shared grief that they have. But yeah, the note thing was, I think my editor at Simon & Schuster, Alexa Pastor, was the one that like said, what if we did a note? And then obviously it made it like a million times better.
Oh, it was so good.
That was most of her suggestions do. But yeah, I think incredible. It was, So that really just helped it.
Yeah, that was a great note.
Helped it take it to the next level.
Cool. So one thing I really loved about this book, and in watching like a lot of other in conversations you've had with other authors, it seems like a lot of people like it or were impressed by it too, is how you really gave Huckabee a personality of its own. And I didn't really realize like how much you'd done that until people started saying it, and then just like working on my own book. And was that hard to do? Was it even like on your mind, or did it just come so naturally when you started writing the first draft? Yeah,
that's a good question. Yeah. I think it just really came naturally, as I think will definitely be seen in your book. Alyson's book, Forget Me Not, is hitting shelves spring 2023. But definitely. Like, I think growing up in Pennsylvania and like growing up where like there's a ton of cows and cornfields, and like especially kind of some of the more rural areas that do have like so much character to them. Even like when you're in them or when you're living in them, you're like, oh boy, like here we are, rural Pennsylvania. But it really does make for a very like lively setting for a story. You know, there's so much like culture there, which is surprising to say. Like it's a chaotic kind of culture. Like people on like 4-wheelers, and like this past weekend setting off like way too big illegal fireworks, like 15 feet from a house, like and right next to a tree, just stuff like that. Like there's just like there's this vibrancy that I think kind of comes naturally, and you just kind of like write what you see and kind of what you know. And I think it just like it seemed really alive to people because like it was a real place. I think that's really the magic of Huckabees. Like you really do have the ability to just like plunk it down anywhere in Pennsylvania, and like somebody knows where it is. Like Pennsylvania is a huge state. It takes like 6 hours to get all the way across it. And like everybody, like you read Huckabee and you're like, yeah, this is like literally 30 minutes down the road from me. It's just like a Pennsylvania town. Like
that is true. Yeah.
It's like a very relatable Pennsylvania town. So, yeah.
As a reader, what is your favorite scene in the Lucky List?
The very ending scene. Yeah, I think just that, like it felt really like it just made my chest feel like really warm writing it, and then also just kind of like rereading it, and like all of it just it was really good, I think.
Yeah, I feel like that last chapter kept getting better, like much better with every
I agree with
draft.
you.
And even the first draft, I remember I just had the weirdest reaction when I finished, and you were there.
Yeah.
I just did the weirdest like laugh, cry, yell, and I just like could not control it. But yeah, I love the ending of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
very feel good.
No, definitely. Yeah. It felt like really good to, I think, finally feel like it was right, because it definitely changed with every revision. Like even it kind of had the same feeling, the same, like, you know, like triumphant, like fill your chest, like end of any kind of like romance, like especially like teen romance, like feel, I think. And yeah, I think with every round and every revision, it like started getting clicked into place a little bit more. And then the last one just felt really right. So I think for me, it's definitely that.
Yeah, I remember the first one was like set in like a school hallway or something. Like
yeah, it was the first day of school.
Yeah, it was such a good idea to bring it back to the bingo scene, just like full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, that was great.
I loved it.
Is it easier or more difficult to write new books now that you have a few under your belt? And how does pressure play a part in that?
That's a very powerful question. I think it really depends. I think parts of it are easier. Like, I think once I have the idea, it's so much easier for me now to like complete a book. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was the hard part before. The hard part was like the mountain of like having a first draft and like having something to work on. And I think I used to be so like afraid of that and so intimidated by it, but that surprisingly isn't the scary part anymore. Like the scary part for me now is definitely like overthinking and like trying to destroy every single idea that I come up with now, because like, I think there is definitely this kind of pressure that I put on myself. It's not like an external pressure to like, you know, write something good. And like, I think that's definitely been the thing that I've been like battling with more, has been like, you know, coming up with these ideas and then finding a way to like talk myself out of it, or like find a plot hole that I'm like, can't fix it. Time to like put it in this giant folder of like 100 ideas that I'm just like, you know, hoping one of them works eventually. So yeah, I think that's definitely the difficult part for me now. It's kind of flipped from just like finishing the book to like, kind of like overthinking the ideas to the point that I just like talk myself out of it, which is really interesting, kind of how that's changed.
It is such a big commitment. Like once you know, get started, like you're going to be with it for probably a couple of years. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's definitely the thing. Like, you know, if I started an idea today, like if I had a completed book today and like I like send it off to hopefully to my publisher to hopefully have it be published, like it wouldn't come out until like 2022? No, today's so 2023. So it wouldn't come out for another like 2 years. So it's like a story that like I really have to feel passionately about, and it's a story that I would want my readers to feel passionately about. So yeah, I think that's also something now that I'm aware of in a way that, you know, I wasn't before, the publishing process in general. So that's really interesting. Kind of how that's shifted.
Yeah. This is kind of fun. Which character in your book would you least likely get along with?
Oh, which character am I least? That was a weird. I don't know. That phrasing got me.
Which character in your book are you least likely to get along with?
There we go.
There we go.
That's a good question. In the lucky list. Oh man, I feel like I like a lot of the characters, so it'd be really hard for me to say. Obviously, Blake and Emily we'd get along with. I feel like maybe like Olivia, who's like in their friend group, who's like kind of judgmental and always just like, I feel like giving Emily some shady eyes and like just has kind of like a negative energy around all of it. Probably her.
I guess they're all pretty likable. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, even I mean, even in her like friend group that kind of like did kind of at the start of the book, you know, it's made known that Emily has like done something to ruin her relationship with her boyfriend, Matt. And yeah, there's definitely this like tension with her friend group throughout the story, because they've all taken Matt's side except for her best friend, Kira, but Kira's away for the summer. So it's this whole complicated thing. But yeah, I think even though her friend group's mad at them, you still, you know, that they're like good people. Like Matt's a great guy. And yeah, I think it's just Olivia's the one who I'd be like, okay, you need to stop with this negativity. There's no need.
Okay. How has your upbringing and environment colored your writing, especially in the Lucky List?
Yeah, I think kind of just what we were talking about, like, I think with Pennsylvania and like growing up like in this place that's like kind of a mash between rural and suburbia, pretty much wherever you are, unless you're like in a major city. Mm-hmm. But I feel like even then, like Pittsburgh, you drive like 30 minutes in any direction, it starts getting like pretty spacious, pretty rural. And it's like that too with Philadelphia. So yeah, I think that was definitely like one way. But then I think just like, you know, the relationships and like I see it even with 5 Feet Apart and that kind of stuff, like Will's character and having like a single mom and kind of his relationship with his dad. And also like, I guess kind of like Emily too, like kind of that relationship with a single parent, but also like it was kind of interesting with Emily's because her dad was the one that was in the picture. And yeah, I think it was really kind of exciting to explore that element of it. Like, you know, having like a rough and tumble dad and kind of like a very interesting relationship where they both care about each other very much, but it can be tricky to find that balance. So I think in all those ways, you know, writing these characters, they're all parts of me. They all have bits of my lived experience, and they all carry like some part of my heart and who I am as a person. So I think that's really the interesting thing about writing is like, it's impossible not to like have a little stamp of you on it. And you kind of write what you know in a lot of ways. You write who you are and what you believe a lot of times into your stories. So yeah.
Does it kind of scare you to get away from like writing what you know?
I guess so. I mean, I think more in the aspect of like, I feel very comfortable in like the YA contemporary realistic fiction part. And I think it would scare me if I was to be like, I'm going to lean into fantasy or I'm going to like lean into this other direction. I think that honestly is kind of what scares me. Like, you know, like feeling like it wouldn't be possibly as like good or as just like well done as kind of my contemporary fiction stuff. And I think that's always interesting as a writer, you know, because on one hand, like that's kind of what you're supposed to do. Like in order to keep growing, you have to try new things and kind of push your limits and see, you know, how science fiction feels and how fantasy feels sometimes, or not even that, just like trying new concepts and new ideas that kind of scare you a little bit. I think sometimes absolutely make you a better writer. It's kind of like in school when, you know, you're given a project that you're not really sure too much about. And that's kind of like what makes you a better writer. So I think that's more what is maybe the intimidating thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does being a successful author look like to you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think really at its core is like just kind of writing stories that I feel good about, writing stories that I think are the stories that I want to tell. And also the most important thing and the most incredible thing is when people pick up those stories and see themselves in it or are inspired by it or kind of connect with it. And I think that's the most magical thing about writing is like having people like read your book and be like, this is me. Like, this is kind of what I've gone through. This is who I am. This is a story that kind of like connects with me on that kind of level. And I think there's like so much magic in that. It's just, you know, having that connection and having that ability to, you know, speak to people anywhere in the world really with your writing. And I think that's really what success as an author looks like. It's just having a single person pick up your book and be like moved by it. And kind of have the magic of that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So 5 Feet Apart was your first book and you were, how old were you when that came out?
Oh, geez. 20.
Were you 22? No, 22?
How long ago was that? Was that 2017?
Yeah.
I was 20.
Yeah, it might have been.
I might have been 22, maybe 20.
Okay. Wow, that's weird.
Maybe 23.
Okay.
I hardly know what age I am now. I think I was 22
23.
I might have been 22 or 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 5 Feet Apart came out and, you know, it was basically an instant #1 New York Times bestseller, I think, which seemed pretty jarring for you. I mean, I was there, you know, watching it.
Yeah.
What is the biggest misconception people have about being a #1 New York Times bestseller?
Oh, geez. I think this really kind of chimes in nicely to like the idea of success question. Because I think, you know, there's just like always this, especially as a writer, like it's just like the pinnacle, you know what I mean? There's this belief that like New York Times bestselling author is like the be all and end all. And like, it's like the thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most important thing is like, kind of like what we were talking about before, you know what I mean? Like, or else like writers that hit the list, like there's nothing left for them if you believe that that's it, especially like doing it so early in your career. Like, I mean, to like have that first book at like 22 or 23, that was just, I was so grateful for it. And it was just like on another level of like, what is even happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, you know, there's this reality that like what matters most is like not that at all. Like what matters most is like, you know, the stories that you write and the people that you touch with those stories. And I think really that is like the determinant of success more than the list at all. It's like really like, I think it's just like the writing. It's like the ability to connect with your stories. And I think kind of there is this misconception that like the list is what's most important sometimes, or like what is so important. And like, there's so much weight put on that, but really it's like the stories that you get to tell and like the people that you're able to connect with and like the ability to keep writing. So that's definitely like I think the most important thing.
That's cool. And I feel like, you know, that belief of yours really shows through in like you writing the Lucky List after these 2 books. Yeah, that's really cool.
Definitely.
What's the best publishing or writing advice that anyone ever gave you?
Whew. Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like it has to be something from Siobhan for people that are listening. Like, we both took a class at the University of Pittsburgh called Writing Youth Literature, and that's where we met. And we had a teacher there, Siobhan Vivian, who is also a young adult author. And like her entire class, I feel like was the best advice I've ever had.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You really learn kind of about how to, just the basics, you know, how to write a strong first chapter, to like outlining, to the basic 3-act structure of a story, but also like the publishing side of things, like, you know, how to write a query letter, how to get an agent, how to kind of maneuver that side of it as well. And I think that was probably the most valuable thing. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there was like anything specific from her. I mean, I feel like every day I'm like, even still sometimes I'm like, I like text her and I'm like, what do you think about this? And just small stuff like that. But I think probably like the best advice I've seen and also kind of given is just like, I think kind of what we were talking about, it all ties back in. It's just kind of like, remember the why. And I think that's like your why. And I think that's really important, like knowing when you sit down in a chair, like why you're doing it and like why you want to tell the story. And I think even within the story itself, like why is this the story that you want to tell? And I feel like that's really what gets you in your seat every day and what can keep that fire alive. And I think when you're a writer, like you definitely do feel that fire, like there's like this magic in being able to write these stories and live these lives. And I think that's honestly the most important thing is like, you know, always going back to that fire and that passion for writing and telling these stories. You know?
I feel like you can tell too, like when you're not writing a story that
when it's not clicking.
It's just, you can feel it. It's not right.
It's like, that's so true. And then like when it is clicking, like you feel that too. Like, it's just like a different kind of magic, you know, and it can't be forced. And I think that's something that a lot of times like people try to do. And also like we have to do sometimes because, you know, you're on a deadline and you have to sit down, you have to write this book, even though sometimes it's like, I'm not feeling it. It's like, well, that's too bad. You have 6 days until this revision is due. But yeah, I think just like reaching that point where you can like kind of dial into that. And I think that's the most important thing. Like I've also heard advice that's like, try to write something every day. And like, you know, sometimes I feel like I tried to do that for a period of time, but I think the most important thing is like, do it when you feel that fire. Like, I mean, if it just feels like you're like pulling teeth, then like, that's not the right time to be doing it, you know? Like it's like when you have that idea and like it's hard to get away from like the computer or the notebook or get out of that headspace. That's like really when magic happens.
Yeah. I think it's important and even like necessary to just like not try to write when you don't want to write, like when you just can't.
Yeah. Unless you have to.
Unless you're on a deadline. Yeah. When you do hit a day when you just can't write, what do you do to get back in the flow again?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like a couple things really help me, like going on walks is really good, or listening to music is a big one too. Like, you know, kind of just putting my headphones in and just kind of trying to like turn on that same playlist that I kind of like felt that spark around, or those songs that like I really felt good listening to. I feel like that always really helps. And then also just like sometimes like getting a coffee, really like just like small, I feel like there are like small things that always kind of like click for me as like, oh, it is writing time, or like, oh, like now is the time to kind of be creative. And like, it's always just like music, like getting a coffee, a vanilla latte from like some coffee shop in the Pittsburgh region, and like just like kind of sitting down in front of my desk and like just seeing what happens, you know, opening a Word document. And I also really like Pinterest. I feel like I'm always like making like little aesthetics or just like pins of like the characters. And I feel like that really helps too, because, you know, pictures have such a like mood to them that like a lot of times it puts you right back into the story.
Yeah. I've never done the mood board thing, but I always see you doing it, and I should really try it.
It really helps. Yeah, no, I honestly recommend it. Pinterest, y'all, like that is the way to go. Like, I think because you can like search like characters and just like general ideas even, and then they'll also give you suggestions. So like all of a sudden, like your entire page is just filled with like little bits that feel like it's kind of like plucked out of your mind, and kind of like the visualization of like what you've been thinking about with the story. So yeah, I totally recommend that for anybody that's like writing or trying to write a story. I think it really just like brings everything to life in a really cool way.
I feel like what I've been doing recently, I don't even know if you know this. So when our agent Emily like pitched my book to Simon & Schuster, she wrote this like really, really lovely letter, just like praising me and like the story and everything. And just, you know, it was like the nicest words anyone's ever said about my writing. So I printed it out and I like have it beside me and I just like read it.
That is so sweet. But honestly, like, yeah, like sometimes you need that. And like, I'm sure it absolutely does, because like, yeah, I think everybody's kind of experienced this, especially if you're a writer, like if you're in a workshop class and like somebody says something nice about your writing, or especially like if it's somebody that you like really care about their opinion, you know, like Emily, like,
it means
or just like an editor or an agent, or just somebody like a teacher or somebody that you really like respect as like a colleague or a friend or a person, when they kind of like, you know, see that magic in your writing, or see some good in your writing. I think that really can inspire you. It feels good. It makes you like want to sit down and write some more. So sort of respect it.
Have you ever thought about writing for a different age group, adult, middle grade, children's? And which one would you do?
Yeah, I feel like definitely I have. I feel like I've always kind of like been close to dipping my toe in adult. Like, you know, 20-something-year-old. I feel like there needs to be like more like early 20-something-year-old books.
Yeah.
Because that's like such a pivotal time. And I feel like people always jump to like late 20s or 30s even. But like, yeah, I feel like lately I've actually like surprisingly been like thinking a little bit about middle grade. And I don't know if I'll ever do it. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. That'd be really cute.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like I've definitely had like some cute ideas that popped up. And I don't know if I'll ever go for them, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I'd have to feel like it was the right voice and the right time. And it's also intimidating, you know, kind of like we talked about before with just like, you know, going out of your comfort zone a little bit. Yeah. But we'll see. I think it would be cool to try one or the other at some point in time.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it if you ever decide to. What is normally sitting on your desk?
Oh God.
I was going to say what's on your desk now, but I know it's probably like completely cleared off. So what's normally on your desk?
Let me see. I always have my planner. I feel like that's always like a really good one. I also really found that like writing with like legal pads, like has really helped me recently. And like, if I'm on any phone call, I really like you can just like flip the pages really easily. And also it's really useful for like coming up with ideas. I feel like sometimes even more than notebooks, like I feel like there's something kind of like transient about like a legal pad where like it's not as permanent as a notebook, you know? Like, I feel like I'd really struggle. I really struggle to throw out notebooks, even if I've only written in like half of them, but like with a legal pad, it just feels like, you know, you rip out like one page and then just toss the rest. Like, I feel like there's like something about legal pads, like you're supposed to just like write and then throw it into the wind. And that's kind of interesting. I feel like I always have some kind of books. Like, I mean, obviously I have the Lucky List right now, but I also have 2 other books on my table. This one is actually in the Lucky List. It is described. So that's kind of exciting. I was able to find like the actual exact copy from like the 1940s, which is super cool.
That's cool, yeah.
And then I also, a fellow writer, Morgan Matson, she like saw this really cool, there's like a Lippincott magazine that like was around back in the like late 1800s, which is kind of cool, but it's like from a publishing company called Lippincott, who like no relation. I'm from like the wrong side of the family. And also my dad took his stepdad's name, so there's literally no relation. Yeah, so I was able to find like a Lippincott's farm manual from like
that's sick
from the late 1800s, and I'm currently looking for a very nice like frame to hang it. But yeah, and then always like some kind of coffee or tea or water. Of course, like I do not have any, and like I'm regretting it tremendously. Like it would have been real nice to have a sip of water at like halfway through this. My mouth is like drier than the Sahara Desert, but yeah. So I feel like just like that, like there's always something to write on. A pen, planner, coffee, and always a book. I always have a book somewhere around here.
Nice. Okay, so I've got like 3 sort of fun, quicker questions, hopefully, and then we're going to go to some questions in the chat. All right. If you had to give up either snacks or music during your writing sessions, which would you choose?
Music. That's so shocking to me. During like physically during my like while I'm writing. Okay, yeah, because that's the big one. Like music, I feel like is more like my idea time. A lot of times I'll like put headphones in and like never turn anything on, which is really interesting. Yeah, I feel like I write probably best in like, I'm fine like going to a coffee shop and having like background noise, but like, so I don't need total silence, but like if I'm like trying to like really think through a sentence or like think through like a revision that I have to make, like sometimes the like sound of the music while I'm reading the words that I have to change on the page and then thinking about the words that I have to make, it's like too much in my head.
Like a woman singing in your ear.
It's like dissonance, like, so probably that. I like also am like, as you know, from our bank account, all I do is like buy snacks. So it's like my thing. Like I'm just like a huge snacker. All I do is just like eat snacks all day, every day.
That is true. I was pretty sure I knew what you would say, but I figured I'd ask. If you had the opportunity to live anywhere in the world to write for 1 year, where would it be?
Oh, that would be so fun. Probably like Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I feel like it would be really cool to go there. You know, just kind of like experience that. And just like my cousin lives in Hawaii now. And like, I feel like all of her pictures are like so picturesque and she's always like hanging out at the beach or like, I had some family members come visit and they like, you know, went like to like this gorgeous, like pristine waterfall. And like, yeah, I feel like that would be kind of cool to like just go there for a year and like, just kind of like see what happens. Also, like I write better as I've found, especially I feel like this year, like I feel like I have more ideas, especially when the weather is nicer. I feel like in the winter, it always just like kind of becomes like everything is like harder, but yeah, I feel like writing, especially like it's like something about like the sun and like sitting outside, all of a sudden, I just feel like I have like a million ideas and I'm just like really excited.
Yeah. Okay. My last question. So you're in a zombie apocalypse.
Oh no.
And you can have like 3 people in your crew. One of them has to be from one of your books. One has to be from someone else's book, and a third one can be a famous person.
Okay. So somebody from my book, that's a good question. I feel like Blake would be like great to take on a zombie apocalypse because she's like so positive and so ready. And like, I feel like she's also kind of like, outdoorsy and like slightly worldly in the sense that she would probably like know how to like pitch a tent and like probably fish and like do like just generally useful things. From another person's book, oh gosh, I feel like it would be good to have like somebody that like knew how to do like magic or something.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
This is really generic, but like the first person that popped into my head was like Hermione from Harry Potter, just because she like, first of all, like in the Harry Potter series, like she just was like the one that like held down the fort, if you know what I mean. Like nobody would be alive if it wasn't for her, especially like the final book where like she just had like a bag that had like all these supplies in it and would like pretty much save all of them at any point in time. And a celebrity, probably just like Bear Grylls from like Man vs. Wild.
Those
right?
are some
like,
good ones on the spot.
I know, like I would be set, like I would make it through, or like at least stay alive longer than most. We got somebody that could do magic, somebody that's specifically an outdoorsman, and then like Blake, who's just like good vibes all around. Probably be good to hang out with. So yeah. Honestly,
I feel like Hermione would be. You just need Hermione, and you guys would be fun.
I know, honestly, yeah, like just a little bit of magic, I probably would make it through. Okay.
All right. So we have a couple questions. Cool. The first one is, what are you reading this week?
That's a good question. I just finished a graphic novel, The Girl in the Sea. Is it in the sea or from the sea? The Girl from the Sea.
Yeah, I think, from
the sea. Okay. Yeah, I just finished that. It was really cute. I am going to start One Last Stop from Casey McQuiston this week. I'm also looking for a copy, and I'm going to buy it from maybe Amazon Books, of Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. I like saw the movie, I think randomly while I was like riding our stationary bike working out. And so like I really want to read the book now because everybody loves the book. So, or at least it was like a semi-cult phenomenon. So that's kind of what I'm reading this week. What about you? I don't know if you want to. You're also, Allison's like currently on deadline, or so.
I am, yeah. Although I don't know.
It can be tricky to.
Yeah, I think so. I'm rereading The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which is my favorite book, and also like has similar vibes to the book I'm writing now.
That helps.
Yeah, it actually has helped me. I love that book. I could reread it like every year, probably for the rest of my life, and just be set.
I love that.
What are the things that inspire you while deciding the theme of your book?
I think there's always like an initial spark, right? So there's like a spark of an idea, and sometimes that can be like completely external. Like for The Lucky List, it was absolutely like kind of just like being in the summer and like thinking about like this beautiful lake in front of me and like kind of like trying to capture the magic of that. I think especially when you're like in high school, you just like, there's this real magic around summer of like the potential and the change and all the things you're going to do. And I think you really see that, like people come back from summers in high school, like completely different people sometimes. And I think like we all are kind of hoping for that, especially when you're in high school. So there was that. But yeah, I think just like the world around me is something that really inspires me when I'm kind of trying to decide the theme. But then also just small things, like sometimes I'll listen to a song and like it'll just like hit me like right in the chest, like, and you kind of like feel that like creative feeling that like that fire and like, where's the story going to take me? Or like it just feels right for the story and kind of gets you in that headspace where you can sit down and write. So yeah, the world around me, music, my Pinterest folders filled with pictures. I think just stuff like that really just helps me. And like Alyson was saying, like with Miseducation at Cameron Post, like sometimes like stories also get you in that headspace.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
who is your favorite author?
You? No. Definitely. I say this all the time, but like Mina LaCour, like I love her writing, and I'm such a huge fan of We Are Okay, and I feel like what always kind of determines it is like writers that I feel like are really good at all of the things that I'm not so good at, or that like my writing, like the polar opposite of my writing sometimes, not necessarily the polar opposite, but like, I feel like I always really admire authors that feel like it's like something new or has like a voice that I really strive for, or not strive for, but like is so different than mine and like a way that I find really interesting and appealing. And I feel like that's what always really just hooks me. I don't know if you have a favorite author you want to.
I'd hate to say the same one. I do love Nina LaCour.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say Nina LaCour, honestly. Like,
I love how you're like, I can't possibly say the same one, and then 5 seconds later, it's like,
yeah. She also has a really killer podcast called Keeping a Notebook.
I recommend for any writers.
Any writers, like real good. If you were on a desert island, which 3 books would you carry with you?
Ooh, I feel like I'd want like really lofty, thick books that like would take me a while to read. Although I guess that would be kind of like bad for carrying around, but then I feel like if like worst got to the worst, then like I would hate to do this, but like you gotta start a fire somehow. I would never, but I'm on a desert island. I'm trying to survive here.
You can.
So I feel like just like really lofty books, maybe like Prior of the Orange Tree, or like a thick hardbound of like one of the Lord of the Rings. Or like, especially because then it would be so interesting. Like, I feel like especially like fantasy books, like they really would be like such an escape from the life that you're currently living. So it'd be good to like read some like J.R.R. Tolkien and like kind of just get that, get to live that life. So Lord of the Rings book, probably like Priory of the Orange Tree, and then like maybe like a Harry Potter. The 4th, because that one's really thick.
Okay, yeah. Name the top 3 comfort reads of yours. One that you'll pick up again and again when in doubt on what to read.
Oh, that's so good. I feel like similar for me, like I know you'd say Miseducation of Cameron Post, but I feel like the writing, especially like in the first chapter, is like so beautiful. And I think about that all the time, just like how well written it is. So I feel like probably that is one that I'd pick up. We Are Okay, again, by Nina LaCour. Like I feel like just like a book. Just like books that like really make you like feel things when you read them.
I feel like you're just going to name all 3 of mine. We'll see. Let's see your third one.
No, this last one you're definitely not going to name. So we're good. My third one would probably be like Water for Chocolate. Just like a really beautiful book. And I really love the writing, and I really love the concept of it, you know, having like a recipe with each chapter that kind of plays into the chapter. So probably that.
My third one would have been Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, that's a good pick too.
Yeah.
Good pick too. That's a nice one.
Yep. Okay.